BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNed88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And just a quick reminder, every Monday is Zodiac Mondays, Wednesday is an Ask Me Anything, that's an AMA, so please drop your questions below for things that you would like discussed here on the show, and Friday is an Anything Goes, any subject is fair game, mostly talking about true crime, serial killers, the Zodiac Killer, but any subject is welcome. Alright, so please share some ideas in the comment section about what you would like to hear about on this channel, and let's get started. Okay, hello everybody. Today is Monday, a Zodiac Monday. Welcome to the show. So 2 weeks ago, we did an episode on the Domingos Edwards murders that occurred on June 4th, 1963, the murders of Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards near Gaviota State Park, near Santa Barbara, but along the California coast is perhaps the most appropriate way to describe it. And then I had wanted to keep going with this material to talk about some criminal activity that occurred in the early 1960s that could be connected to the Zodiac Killer, as well as to just find out if there are any links, period, between these crimes. And I had meant to keep going with this, but of course last week I did the merchant marine theory. I was very thankful to have interviewed someone named Kat, who has shared with me her theory, and it's done in 2 segments. The first draft, like the first cut of the episode, has been put out, and then another one called Zodiac Killer Merchant Marine Theory that was a revival of it, if you will, a rephrasal, repackaging of the original episode. So those 2 episodes are on the channel if anyone would like to hear them. But now I would like to pick up where we left off with the Domingos Edwards murders, because 2 days before the Domingos Edwards murders in June of 1963 was the murder of Vernon Smith, and it's really a day and a half or 2 days when things come to fruition. But let's hear a little bit more about this case, about the death of Vernon Smith, and an individual named Sandy, who is going to be very important to a lot of Zodiac Killer theories out there. Some people flat out think that this person who allegedly murdered Vernon Smith was indeed the Zodiac Killer. This person, Sandy, murdered Vernon Smith, murdered Robert Domingos, murdered Linda Edwards, and then went on to commit the Zodiac Killer murders in the later part of the 1960s. I would also like to give a big shout out to the Santa Cruz Sentinel. I'm going to be reading a lot of their material, and it's so nice that we have websites like newspapers.com that provide us this stuff. And going to the Santa Cruz Sentinel article from 1963, written by Ron Reeves. 2 Santa Cruz teenagers have admitted roles in a weekend murder robbery of an elderly man at Lompoc, a strong-arm robbery here Friday night, 2 auto thefts, and a Santa Cruz YWCA entry, a detective said today. They are James L. Coleman, age 16, and J.C. Reed Jr., age 17. Neither has a permanent address. The 2 boys were arrested early yesterday morning by city police when a Santa Cruz hotel clerk became suspicious of their actions. Their admissions came during interrogation which lasted the day and until midnight last night. They have been sent to Santa Barbara for questioning there. They say that the murder was committed by another youth. The dead man is Vernon C. Smith, age 67, and I have to make one quick interjection. It says in this article that Vernon Smith was 67 years old when he died, but in some other sources it says that he was 63. So, Vernon C. Smith, found Monday morning by a truck driver near his house trailer in the Lompoc area. He had been stabbed in the back and had been robbed. And of course, the alleged perpetrator in this event is none other than Sandy. I have to share one thing with you guys, and that is my absolute first instinct when I was looking into Sandy. And you have these 2 guys here, J.C. Reed and James Coleman, and they're saying that this individual, known only by the alias Sandy, committed the murder of Vernon Smith. And I was like, no, wait a second, did that really happen? Or are these 2 just fudging with the detectives, and they're just making up some story about how Sandy committed the murder? I mean, wouldn't it sound like one of them actually committed the murder and they just made up this silly story. But there are other people who witnessed Sandy. Numerous people have seen this individual, Sandy, and it does sound like he was a real person. Even just reading up a little bit on the subject, it appears that Sandy is indeed real. But that was my first instinct. I just had to share that. But the motivation for the murder of Vernon Smith was quite simple. It was a robbery, and then that turned into a murder. And J.C. Reed and James Coleman described Sandy as just turning on Vernon Smith, pulling the knife, stabbing him, and laughing while he committed this murder. And the encounter with Vernon Smith actually begins on June 2nd of 1963. J.C. Reed, James Coleman, and Sandy have a stolen car that runs out of gas, and they approach this trailer. And in one of the Santa Cruz Sentinel articles, they even described Vernon Smith's trailer as being parked on a lonely canyon road. I mean, journalists love their adjectives and their place names. So he's on this lonely canyon road, and they approach the trailer. I believe Sandy is actually the first one to approach Vernon Smith's residence. They talk about being out of gas, and Vernon Smith decides to help them. This is all in the late evening of June 2nd of 1963. And then they get the gas for the car, and in short, while Vernon Smith is helping them, this is when Sandy turns on him, stabs him, and the knife even goes into Vernon Smith's heart, and he passes away very shortly after the stab wound is inflicted. Then they search him, he is robbed, and the famous line about this is that they give Sandy $20 and then they part ways. That's J.C. Reed and James Coleman. That was another reason why I was somewhat skeptical of the story at first, because I was like, now wait a second, he's only getting $20 for this, but they simply lied to Sandy about the amount of money that they were able to obtain from Vernon Smith, and it was actually $360 that they were able to obtain. And I'm just doing a little bit of kind of math guessing with this. I guess you would say guesstimations, is that they stole $360 from Vernon Smith, but perhaps they told Sandy that they only were able to find $60 out of Vernon Smith's overalls. So then they split that three ways. Everybody had $20, and then they went on their way. But right now, I would actually like to go over to MK Zodiac and share some things, and first giving a shout out to Ricardo for running this excellent website here, Ricardo Gomez of MK Zodiac, and over there there's a very detailed timeline about the events leading up to the murder of Vernon Smith and then on to the murders of Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards. So let's go back to Friday, May 31st of 1963, just to read a little bit here. The individual known as Sandy met James L. Coleman, age 16, and J.C. Reed Jr., age 17, at the beach boardwalk in Santa Cruz. Sandy had also met other people at the beach, including Stephen Straub, a Santa Cruz resident who later would draw a sketch of Sandy. As I said, other people witnessed this guy. It appears that he is very real. Coleman, Reed, and Sandy began a crime spree together, which included robbing a woman of $20 in her apartment in Santa Cruz. Well, Sandy got $20 from this woman and then $20 from Vernon Smith. I think that it was probably some trickery on the part of Coleman and Reed there too, but I digress from that. The three teenagers stole the car and drove to Lompoc. Saturday, June 1st, 1963. Sometime between 4 a.m. and 5 a.m., Coleman, Reed, and Sandy arrived and drove to Santa Maria. Saturday, June 2nd, 1963. Coleman, Reed, and Sandy drove around the Lompoc area in Santa Maria during the day. In the evening, they met Vernon C. Smith, a quarry worker in Lompoc, and decided to rob him. And that was for the reason that we laid out before. They said they were out of gas. Vernon Smith decided to help them, and then he was betrayed by Sandy. Vernon Smith was 63 years old, and this website lists the date of his birth, born February 22nd, 1900. So I think that's just a little bit more info, and Vernon Smith was most likely 63 years old, not 67 like the way the Santa Cruz Sentinel reported. Sometime around 11 p.m., Sandy told Smith that they had run out of gas and he asked for help near his camper truck in the San Miguelito Canyon. As Smith filled the gas tank of their stolen car, Sandy suddenly stabbed Smith with a hunting knife, and this is the part where Sandy busts out into laughter And there are going to be some differences between the murder of Vernon Smith that is occurring, as you heard. First, it's on June 2nd when they first have this encounter with Smith, but the approximate date of Vernon Smith's death is June 3rd, 1963. There's going to be some differences between the murder of Vernon Smith and the murders of Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards. But let's keep going with the timeline. At approximately 12:15 a.m., Smith died from the knife wound. Sandy laughed about the murder of Vernon Smith as if it was a joke. Smith had $360, of which Coleman and Reed gave Sandy $20 and kept the rest for themselves. And as I said before, it's because they lied to him. They told him they found less money. About 2 a.m., Coleman and Reed left Sandy by a motel at Arroyo Grande because Sandy was acting strange. Yeah, you think? He just murdered a guy. He was laughing about it. Yeah, you think he was acting strange. Well, I guess that's what happens when you're dealing with drifters. You're not exactly cross-checking their references. Okay, so now we're on to June 4th of 1963. Coleman and Reed left the stolen car near Salinas and they hitchhiked back to Santa Cruz. Meanwhile, Robert Domingos and Linda Faye Edwards decided to go to the beach instead of doing a senior ditch day party. Now we are at the Gaviota Beach murders. Okay, Robert Domingos was 18 and Linda Edwards was 17. Domingos and Edwards were actually planning to get married, according to Ricardo's website here. Sometime in the afternoon or evening, Domingos and Edwards were killed at Gaviota, approximately 30 miles south of Lompoc. And when people are looking at their suspects, I think it's going to be important to try and place somebody in that area. Sandy definitely seems like he could have been in that area. But in regards to this individual, Sandy, do you think that, based on everything you've heard about the murder of Vernon Smith, that he actually committed that one and then went on to commit the Gaviota Beach murders? The area in which the car that Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards had been driving was, on Highway Route 101. And I think that it's very easy to form two possible theories, because there's also a seaside shack that is there. And the shack, well, it was reported to have been made out of driftwood, but I was listening to an interview with Dr. John Everett, who made the documentary that's on Tom Voigt's channel about the murders of Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards, and I was listening to the interview from WCTE, and they provided a photo of the shack, and it definitely looks more solid than I expected, because I was really thinking that this was just going to be some driftwood that had been piled together with some type of door that's kind of leaning on it. No, it's a solid shack. I mean, it's a shed. It's a constructed small building. I know that's a horrible way to describe it, but I think you can get the idea. So you have that place, and then you have the car that's on Highway Route 101. One theory that somebody even wrote into the comments section was, do you think that it's possible that someone was trying to be an opportunistic murderer? One of these incidents where this person wants to commit a murder, but the victims are not pre-selected, and they just want to commit a murder, and they aren't so focused on who it is. So they're driving down Highway Route 101, they see a car that's parked by the beach, so one car that is, so they get down just to see who is there, if it's going to be a candidate to murder. I mean, the problem with that is, what if it's, four guys that are twice this dude's size? I mean, and he tries to go showing up with, wearing a hooded costume or something like that. I mean, just saying, if there's any similarity to Lake Berryessa, I mean, but I want to point out that this person would have had to at least seen the victim before he would have decided to commit any type of action. Or you could have had somebody who was on the run, maybe the way that Sandy was, living in the shack overnight. Maybe they found a gun. Maybe they found 4 boxes of .22 caliber ammunition, Super X, and then they decided to attack Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards because they were on the run and they didn't want anybody noticing them. They didn't want any witnesses. That could have also been something. But right now, I would actually like to go to Dr. John Everett's interview, and I would like him to share some material about the murders of Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards, and we will let him share this in his own way, and then we will respond to it. So let's listen.
His daddy was going to the beach, didn't say where, and from what I can find out from talking to people that day, they didn't make a plan about where they were going until Bobby picked Linda up. They left her house. She lived in Lompoc, and he lived to the east of Lompoc on a ranch. And then decided where they were going and drove to this isolated spot where Bobby had been before. They parked their car. It was a Pontiac, older Pontiac, 1962 Pontiac, 1959 Pontiac, I'm sorry. Then walked across this Highway 101, pretty busy highway, down to the beach. It's about a 600-foot walk from the road down to the beach. It drops about 200 feet. And they were sunbathing there. And around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, this person, whoever it was, approached them. There was some kind of a conflict that took place between Bobby and this individual. He had a bruise on his lip. Evidently, this person had Linda tie up Bobby from behind. And then he then tied up Linda. But Linda did tie up Bobby very securely, and Bobby got loose. That's when the conflict took place. And then they started to run up this creek bed under a bridge. And the gentleman then shot them from a distance and then came up and shot them excessively. Shot Bobby 11 times and Linda 9 times. He then dragged the bodies up about 30 yards or so to this shack and dumped them in this shack. Then he tried to set the shack on fire, but it was unsuccessful. So before he arrived, he took pre-cut pieces of rope, more than he needed for 2 people, matches, and had a knife with him because he cut her swimsuit, but there was no sexual assault. And then fled, and he left boot prints. And there are a lot of things that tie him to Vandenberg Air Force Base.
Okay, and that was Dr. John Everett, who made the documentary that, once again, you can find on YouTube for free. And I just wanted to get the name of Dr. John Everett's film, and that is Bodies in the Shack, Who Murdered Bobby and Linda, and Tom Voigt has posted it in 5 segments called The Zodiac Killer's First Victims. Okay, now, let's respond to those comments right after this and find out if there's a link between the murder of Vernon Smith, the Domingos Edwards murders at Gaviota, and then the Zodiac Killer mystery right after this message. Bum ba bum 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 ba bum 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 ba bum bum bum. At this time, I would like to talk about some of the ways in which you can help Black Box Online Radio. This channel relies on your support, and the best way you can help out is just by listening to some more content. If you like what you hear, you can hit that like button, subscribe, and share with your friends on social media. But I should also say that Black Box Online Radio now has a TeeSpring page, and there will be some links in the description box. Please feel free to check out some of the merchandise that is available. Almost all sizes and colors are listed. So, you can also help out by going over to the Zodiac Killer channel and watching the documentary series Obsession into Darkness, parts 1, 2, and 3. I was one of the contributors for that, and you can see some other great Zodiac content on the Zodiac Killer channel. And yes, there will be a part 4 of Obsession into Darkness at some point in the future. And for now, let's get back to the show. Okay, hello everybody, we are back. First, I would like to give a shout out to YouTube user Playtime, who sent me some material about the murder of Vernon Smith, as well as the murders of Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards. And Playtime has sent this into the email, actually, blackboxonlineradio@aol.com. There's a link to the email in the description box, or the email address is posted in the description box, blackboxonlineradio@aol.com. And Playtime has written, YouTube seems to allow my comments when I keep them softball. Richard Grinnell was the first to see these Zodiac ideas. Number 1, Sandy was convicted for the 3 murders, tried and convicted in absentia. The laughing was not actually witnessed. It was an angle that was pushed by yellow journalists, that thing about Sandy laughing while he's stabbing Vernon Smith. It was an angle pushed by yellow journalists. The pistol that was used by the Zodiac was determined to be high-standard Duramatic .22 pistol sold at Sears. By the way, does anybody still shop at Sears? Are they still around? And the Zodiac even writes about how it was discontinued, but he was able to buy it outside of California. It was discontinued because of the noise suppressor. And thank you to Playtime for sharing all of these things. But in regards to the murder of Vernon Smith, the first thing I would say is that I have not found a photo of Vernon Smith. I was trying to find something maybe like attached to his obituary or any photo at all. So if anybody has a photo of Vernon Smith, the man who was murdered by Sandy, please send it to blackboxonlineradio@aol.com. You can also contact me at blackboxned88 on Instagram. But was this done by the Zodiac Killer? Is there a Zodiac connection here? Well, I think that Domingos Edwards has a fair degree of credibility for being a Zodiac crime. I'm not convinced at all. Absolutely not. But when I say a fair degree of credibility, I definitely can see what people are saying when they're like, it appears that Domingos Edwards and Gaviota is almost what would have happened if Lake Berryessa had gone wrong, approaching people with a gun, a knife, pre-cut lengths of rope, instructing the female victim to tie up the male victim. But here is a key difference. Maybe you heard John Everett say there? Alright, so Linda Edwards' swimsuit is cut with the knife. Her breasts are exposed, but she is not sexually assaulted. What on earth could that be? Is it possible at all that Linda Edwards was the primary target for this? And it was just someone who was trying to sexually assault her, that this individual either contemplated sexually assaulting her or they were about to, but then Linda Edwards did not tie up Robert Domingos very well, so he's able to struggle a little bit, he's able to fight back, and then he gets into this physical confrontation with the perpetrator, and then they start running. Then the gunman starts firing, and at this point, it's really difficult to know the exact time when Linda Edwards' swimsuit would have been cut, because one thing I did read, I think it may have been on ZodiacCiphers.com, but when the bodies were dragged to the shack, it was about 30 yards that John Everett said. Okay, so they're being dragged to the shack, and Robert Domingos is dragged on his stomach, but Linda Edwards was dragged on her back. So it's difficult to know if the swimsuit was cut at the shack, and that this was just meant to show that this person is carrying a knife by rope, by knife, by gun, by fire. The person is thinking about the Tim Hole comic, The Wheel of Death, the different elements that are on the cover of that Wheel of Death, and then they're trying to become a younger, inexperienced Zodiac, and then this person is going to go on to commit these Zodiac killer murders. It's really hard to think about that because could this just have been someone who was trying to sexually assault Linda Edwards, and then she is I mean, like, well, it's really Robert Domingos who's able to get free, and they get into this confrontation, and at that point, the perpetrator is just like, I'm going to fire some bullets at these people, I'm going to subdue them, neutralize them, because he doesn't want to get caught. Then he drags the bodies to the shack, sets it on fire, perhaps to destroy evidence. Now, in regards to the ammunition, maybe you heard at the end of the audio clip that was played, John Everett is saying that it is most likely connected to the Air Force base that was nearby. Because we did the episode on Ross Sullivan recently, I played a clip from the show, the Hunt for the Zodiac Killer, and it was talking about, like, that's the History Channel show, and they were talking about how the ammunition from the Domingos Edwards shooting was identified as 22 caliber Super X ammo that was sold at the Air Force Base. And they did this by tracking the lot number. The lot number on the boxes of ammunition that were found at the shack came from that Air Force Base. So that also suggests that this is somebody who is either in the Air Force or is working at the Air Force Base or has some type of connection to that Air Force Base. And then but like, if we think about Lake Berryessa, what kind of boot prints were left behind at Lake Berryessa? 10.5 wing walker boot prints. I mean, does this also mean that there's just somebody who was in the Air Force and went on to commit a very large series of murders and left behind an enormous amount of calculated mathematical signatures? When Michael Cole was writing his book Zodiac, a Revisited Volume 3, he put forward the possibility that this person wanted to murder Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards, but he realized that sometimes a premeditated, pre-planned murder isn't going to go according to plan, and the victims are going to fight back, and that the same person committed the murders of Gaviota and the Lake Berryessa stabbing, which led to the murder of Cecilia Shepard, or it led to the death of Cecilia Shepard. She was murdered at Lake Berryessa, passed away 2 days later in the hospital. Okay, so that's another element that could be there. And also, John Everett even talked about how at Lake Berryessa, the perpetrator made sure that Brian Hartnell's restraints were tied on much tighter, like he practically retied them to make sure that Brian Hartnell was subdued, because it was almost like reliving the Gaviota Beach murders. Robert Domingos was able to fight back, whereas Brian Hartnell did not. But also, if you look at the Lake Berryessa transcripts, and you can even watch David Fincher's film, or look at Obsession into Darkness, Part 3, the documentary series, and there's the clip of what would have happened at Lake Berryessa. Cecilia Shepard simply wants to just comply with the killer, the perpetrator. He would have been the perpetrator at the time. Her murderer, actually, as horrible as that is. And Brian Hartnell openly said that he would have been willing to risk his life, but he would not have been willing to risk Cecilia Shepard's life. And the Zodiac is telling Cecilia Shepard and Brian Hartnell, don't get any ideas. He's commanding them, and they went along with this. Was this somebody who orchestrated the Lake Berryessa stabbing because he wanted to recreate Gaviota? He did not commit that murder very skillfully, and in fact, it was a crime where almost everything went wrong. The victims practically got away. I mean, especially if there was an attempted sexual assault, and then the perpetrator was interrupted, or maybe not even attempted, but contemplating the sexual assault of Linda Edwards. I'm not saying that that actually happened. I just put out the possibilities. What I can say as a fact is that Linda Edwards' swimsuit was cut from the top down and her breasts were exposed. That seems to be what actually occurred, and it was done with a knife. The forensics have determined that. But in regards to a theory, I think that one point that would not fit the murder of Vernon Smith into the Domingos Edwards murders involves something that I'm almost tempted to call the full circle theory, and that is that if you look at the murder of Ray Davis in 1962, and then the murders of Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards in 1963, they are quite similar to the murders of Cecilia Shepard in 69 and Paul Stine 2 weeks later in October of 69. And it's almost as if someone is coming full circle, first murdering a taxi driver and then doing something crazy afterward, a weird phone call or mailing in a piece of Paul Stine's bloody shirt. Then there is a seaside or waterside moment where someone is attacking two people, asking the female victim to tie up the male victim, getting into this large exchange, and then trying to go after a couple, a man and a woman, who are together by a body of water at Gaviota with Domingos Edwards, also at Lake Berryessa with Cecilia Shepard and Brian Hartnell. That is another major similarity. So I'm really tempted to just write that as a novel because I'm noticing something about that. But then what about all these other crimes that have occurred? How exactly would they fit into that full circle theory? And I don't even know if that deserves an episode here on Black Box Online Radio, because as I said, I think that that's almost taking the real facts and then adding in some fictitious connections. But there is something about that that is really catching my attention. And that what if somebody was trying to commit this series of murders in almost a 360-degree fashion, where they're going to start with murdering a taxi driver and end with murdering a taxi driver. But how would that fit in the murder of Vernon Smith, if indeed Sandy was the Zodiac? Now, if we look at just that, like getting away from any specific Zodiac incident, I was talking a lot about Lake Berryessa, but if we get away from any specific Zodiac incident, I'm not sure the exact page that read this. It might have actually been on a forum. I think it was on Tapa Talk when someone was saying Sandy was most likely in his late teens when he committed the murder of Vernon Smith. Maybe 18, maybe 19. No one really knows. They don't know his real name. But if Sandy was 17 or 18 years old for that murder, 1963 to 1969, I'm going to do some fast math and expect that that is around 6 years. Then he would have been 23 or 24 years old. Are we dealing with a 23 or 24-year-old Zodiac? I mean, most people seem to place Sandy in around his teen years, and around his late teens, like 17, 18, 19, but it's really impossible to say exactly because, I mean, for starters, I don't even believe that Sandy was his real name. Absolutely not. When I first heard that, my first instinct was also, I mean, I told you I thought he didn't exist, and that Sandy was just a made-up name, but I thought, after I learned that he did exist, maybe he got the name because of a sandy color in his hair, as well as the sandy beaches of California. And to the credit of people who've been pointing out that in the Vallejo area there's a sandy beach road, there's a sandy drive, and so on. I mean, I appreciate them looking into that, but I don't think that that is the hardest level of hardest level um, material, like the biggest pieces of substance that are actually going to give us any answers. Of course, there are going to be things like Sandy Beach Road or Sandy Beach Drive in the state of California that is a coastal state. But I definitely do not believe that Sandy was his real name. It's possible. Oh, it's possible. But I don't personally believe that if I had to make a determination right now. And right now I'm just going over to ZodiacCiphers.com to get a little bit more info about Sandy. By the way, there are two excellent articles about the Domingos Edwards murders at, well, I should say near Gaviota State Park on ZodiacCiphers.com. And there's some very nice and very well detailed graphics that have been put up that show about all the places and the different locations. And if you'd like to see the real life versions of this, John Everett's documentary has a lot of videography that has really captured the way that the beaches would have looked, and there's some good sources out there. But just to read the wanted poster about Sandy, as I said, committed the murder of Vernon Smith and a suspect in the murders of Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards, although Playtime did share that stuff with me about how he was tried and convicted in absentia. So it says, wanted for investigation, homicide, uses the nickname Sandy. He wears black frame glasses and most likely has a prescription for being nearsighted. Age 17 to 18 years old. Once again, that would mean 23, 24-year-old Zodiac. That can be a challenge question. Do you believe the Zodiac killer was 23 to 24 years old? And if not, who do you think was the Zodiac? What age do you think the Zodiac was? What would you respond to that? And I'm totally going down the single perpetrator theory with that. I mean, well, you can respond to that question in whatever way you'd like. Do you believe the Zodiac killer was 23 or 24 years old when committing the murders in 1968 and 69? Sandy would have weighed approximately 150 pounds. He wore pants that were low on his hips, he smoked cigarettes, and he had blonde hair that was not bleached. So, I would actually like to keep reading about this here on ZodiacCiphers.com. On June 15, 1963, investigators traveled to Santa Cruz to apprehend two teenagers, James L. Coleman and J.C. Reed Jr., for the fatal stabbing of Vernon C. Smith. By the way, the C stands for Charles. Vernon's Charles Smith, age 63. Once again, another source saying that he was 63, not 67, in the Lompoc robbery. Neither were considered suspects in the Domingos Edwards slayings, but implicated a third person called Sandy in the murder of Vernon Smith. The two youths admitted their part in the robbery, but claimed it was Sandy who perpetrated the murder in the camper truck owned by Vernon Smith and parked on San Miguelito Canyon. Is anybody else also just reading that again thinking, is their story really true? I mean, I think the only reason the authorities believe this, and maybe not the only reason, but one of many, is that they would have interrogated J.C. Reed and James Coleman for hours, and apparently they came to a consensus that both of them admitted it was Sandy. They too youths admitted their part in the robbery, but claimed it was Sandy who perpetrated the murder. And then Coleman and Reed were eventually convicted in the Santa Barbara County Court and sentenced to 5 years to life for second-degree murder. Sandy was then sought for questioning in relation to the Domingos Edwards murders. Santa Barbara detectives later stated they discovered a vehicle stolen by the three youths and inside retrieved some clothing they thought had to have been owned by Sandy. The clothing contained the names Robert Kaufman and William Carr, one of which they believe could be the true identity of Sandy. The problem is Robert Kaufman, William Carr, very ordinary common names, and it would be difficult to determine if these individuals, either one of these names was actually Sandy's real name. Another point that I would just like to ask as a challenge question, do you believe either one of those possibilities that I laid out, that somebody was looking for a victim, a predator was on the prowl, and saw this car parked at the beach and is driving down Highway Route 101, stops and gets out of the car, wants to see who's on the beach, and then sees Linda Edwards and decides to sexually assault her, has Robert Domingos tied up, but then he fights back, and then this perpetrator uses his gun to shoot the victims? Or do you believe the other possibility of someone is living in the shack and then they spot two people on the beach and this person doesn't want to be noticed, maybe even someone dealing with some mental instability, and this person shoots them and drags their bodies? Which one do you think is more plausible? Or do you have a better theory about the murders of Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards? I mean, and the biggest challenge question of all is, do you believe that this individual, Sandy, murdered Vernon C. Smith and then murdered Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards? Are all these three crimes committed by the same person, and then Sandy went on to become the Zodiac killer? What would you say about that? Please give your responses in the comment section below. One more time, you can write the show at BlackBoxOnlineRadio at AOL.com and BlackBoxNet88 for the bonus podcast on Instagram. That's all for me now. Until next time.